All right, well, welcome everybody. I see we've got quite a few people who have joined this very special session of From Change to Change. It is actually the first time that we've ever had so many live guests. My name is Bruce Reilly, aka
DJ Bruha.
and yeah, I'm here with some of my esteemed colleagues. I got Ronald Marshall, I got Donald and Eugene, and I got Devin over here, and all of you all that are on the Zoom. We're here to talk about an update on the crime session, which started earlier this week. And I guess I'm just going to start it by giving everybody a little bit of a narrative, kind of like what has been going on, where we are, before we kind of get into hearing from y'all and asking and sharing some perspectives. I know that there's more than a few of you all who actually testified at the legislature, and we really need to share out with the community what we're hearing, what we're sharing, and what we can do going forward. So first, I just want to, for those that are less familiar, the Louisiana legislature has started a special legislative session on crime, prior to their regular legislative session, to show that this is a #1 priority for this governor in particular. What we've seen is 24 bills that one could easily make a case that none of them actually prevent crime, except for the theory, the concept of, if I take everyone who has committed a crime already and then I lock them up, let's say argument's sake, forever, that particular person won't commit another crime. But it does nothing for the circumstances that any one of us were in to have done a crime to begin with. And so, as we know, there's going to be another batch of 15-year-olds, 20-year-olds, 25-year-olds committing crimes. And if we're making the world a worse place, we're actually going to encourage more crime. But I want to give guys and y'all a rundown a bit of what these bills are and what they're doing. And I'm going to take them a little bit out of order, but only because I feel like it's going to make a little bit more sense when we think about these bills kind of in conjunction with each other. So first, policing. We know that the governor also did a state of emergency around policing, and generally states of emergency are so you can bypass laws and restrictions, and also have emergency funding. So for the ability of people to hire up more police, we don't know exactly how that is or might play out, but we all get the general concept here. And we heard about, this idea that we'll have a second layer of police in New Orleans, this state police troop. I just want to flag for everybody that last night on the House floor, Representative Jason Hughes, who's from the East, he laid out for the legislature just exactly kind of how it feels to live in this city and to be called sort of this Wild West, where we're all going to die kind of thing, and how safe he feels. And then also how skeptical he is of this troop. Like, how big is it? How long are they going to stay? How much is it going to cost? What's it going to look like working with the local police or the attorney general or the DA? So these are all questions that are being rushed through and not even answered in the course of days that might radically transform Louisiana for us. So there is a bill, several bills that would limit immunity for police as well. And there was a really healthy debate on the floor, which went largely ignored by the sponsors of the bill. And what it seems to do is, unless a police officer is charged with a crime, then they're going to basically, there's a good likelihood they'll evade liability or they'll be immune from a civil suit in state court. And people brought up the situation of Ronald Green's case, very well documented, motorist covered up, killed by the state police, and charges dismissed. Like, well, would those police officers get immunity under this law? And that's where these debates kind of get gray and fuzzy, and people just kind of nod their head and like, well, and I'm trying to do this. And so it's sends quite a message, and it would apply to all peace officers, right down to those neighborhood watch type police officers, that security, because you're working for a police subdivision. So what it's really trying to do and what it might do is we're gonna find out in the long run. But clearly it's the type of thing that it's skeptical to give it the best credit. So then I want to start with HB3, which is a bill to expand drug testing it's under this sort of mantra, expanding drug court. But keep in mind, it doesn't actually expand drug court. It just gives money to sheriffs to do testing within 24 hours of arrest. Now, if you're going to test people for drugs, or we all know that what you did in that last 24 hours or didn't do is not necessarily indicative of an addiction you might have or not have. And some drugs stay in your system longer than others. It's like, why are you doing all this testing when we know that drugs is a huge part of arrests and criminal activity? And so rather than taking a public health approach, obviously we've been taking this punitive approach for decades, and people are not getting well unless they can get the sort of diversion, because maybe, they're lucky enough or they know somebody to get into the treatment rather than going into punishment. So all those drug tests, like, the money is coming out of the opioid settlement money, which a corporation like lost hard on the issue of pushing drugs on our community through doctors' prescriptions. And, here we are just trying to like give these massive sentences for so-called drug dealers, but the real drug dealers, the ones that are paying out billions of dollars to the states, that money's supposed to go to like rehabilitation and preventive kind of measures, not just locking up more users, right? And so this is really a perversion of the purpose of the drug testing. And they want to do a 25-year mandatory. They will do. Let's just call all these things like they're passing. 25-year mandatory minimum if you have possession with intent of fentanyl that arguably is just brightly colored. Now, we all take a lot of different pills in our lives, whether it be, Sudafed or Tylenol or whatever. We know that bright colors are a part of pills. We know that the gummy consistency is part of like delivery system. But if they're going to take everything that's got like kind of a gummy consistency or a bright color and call it attractive to minors, which is of course a subjective approach, well, that's pretty much going to wrap in anyone who doesn't have a basic plain white pill, like an aspirin kind of pill. And 25-year mandatory minimum, we all know that most people who have a drug issue also are small time dealers. I bought 4 things, I'm going to sell 3 and keep 1. You're not a big deal. But if I got 4 things on me, I could be possibly busted with possession with intent to deliver. Now they're saying it's about kids, but an amendment to try to limit it to actual sales to actual kids was shot down. It's really going to get adult to adult kind of stuff. And as we know, and I'll just say as someone who was a drug dealer as a kid, you're not marketing to people who don't have any money. You're marketing to people with money. You're not trying to like create new customers when there's plenty of customers to serve. So it's really a big fabrication to give these mandatory minimums that are really scary. And as we know, if you threaten people with enough time, well, they're just going to plead out to whatever you want. So that's another big part of this. And keep in mind too that teenagers are squarely in the sights of this legislature. They seem really dead set on, the biggest problem in this state is teenagers acting up. And meanwhile, they don't want to take free money to help kids be stabilized and get like food to kids or jobs programs to kids, but they will secure budget increases to put 17-year-olds into prison, which, as we know, is actually just going to like lead people into more life of crime, not less. The data is there. Like if you go through the juvenile system, you have a lower recidivism rate. You go in the adult system, you have a higher one. And so they're really but they're, we had this raise the age thing for 5 years. They could have implemented 17-year-olds in the youth system They made no changes to the system, spent no money on courts and no money on lawyers, no money on detention centers, and then decided, despite only about 30, 40, 50 people being locked up, it was enough to burst the system to now complain, we got to put 17-year-olds back in the adult system. And when you clear up the 50 beds on the juvie system, you're going to replace it with another 50 like 16-year-olds, 15-year-olds. So you're not going to save any money on the juvie side. So any arguments with that are just false. And then you're going to put them in the adult side and just more for every crime, not just like serious crimes, but every crime. So that's going to create actually more crime in the future. And one great testimony, shout out to Matt Green, who gave a really great perspective for the committee around that issue. We can hear more about that later. Another bill that was passing the House floor like literally just minutes ago is HB1, and that's the so-called transparency bill. I like calling it the doxing bill because really it's going to take arrest records, including of all juveniles accused of a violent crime, and put them out on the internet for anyone to scrape, repost. We know how these background check companies work. They just take data and then it takes forever to get something that's false off of them. So imagine, your 16-year-old child is accused of a violent crime, could be assault with a deadly weapon. Maybe he got arrested with 6 other people. They knew that one of them was like there, one of them probably did or whatever, and he was just like the least involved, didn't have anything to do with anything. Well, now, he's got to go to school the next day. Maybe he got bonded out. And now everyone's talking about his arrest for assault with a deadly weapon. And he's dealing with all this stuff. Maybe his employer was like a little bit sketch about him already with his after school job of like, well, Jimmy, you don't really seem to be showing up as much. You're 16. Well, now it's like, you're done. So people are going to be facing all this discrimination around housing and employment. And half of arrests don't even result in a conviction. But that's like even just the arrest. Now put all the convictions and trying to make it all front page, publicized, mugshot kind of stuff. That's actually just going to create more crime. So in terms of special crime session, yeah, it fits, but it's creating more crime. So along a similar line, we're hearing criminals' rights is a thing that should be pushed back. There's too much criminals' rights. As we all know, there's no criminals' rights kind of thing that was created by people who have committed crimes. There's literally a Bill of Rights, a constitution. There's a First, Second, Fourth, Eighth, Fifth, Sixth Amendment, all these things that help us have our freedom, including our protections when we're charged and accused of a crime or put through trial. And so when people bemoan criminals' rights, as our governor has very outspokenly, they're talking about the Constitution. And that's the only rights that they're talking about. So you're being unconstitutional. One of the bills that is maybe a little bit more in jeopardy, to be honest, is SB 8, which is moving the public defender's office under the governor. And if you had a governor who was maybe a former defense counsel or a governor who was like really strong in supporting the Bill of Rights, maybe that would be less concerning. But this particular governor makes it all the more concerning that he's going to have the power to appoint someone who also will then have the power to water down public defense. Someone who can hire less vigorous public defenders, someone who can curtail the investigation and expert witnesses that are critical of sadly proving your innocence, even though they should be proving your guilt. And so the ability of watering down indigent defense is going to be squarely in their hands. So something to think about. So what happens upon arrest and then after that drug test? Well, some of these people will be on probation and parole, as we know. And another bill, HB 11, is set to increase probation sentences from 3 years to 5 years, right? And it will also allow them to violate you for as little as an arrest. Currently, you have to be convicted of a crime. They want to move it to a potential arrest. And so, as we were just talking about half of things not turning out into convictions, Well, if you have 5 years hanging over your head, now upon arrest, and maybe with a marijuana positive test or some other things that might be happening, or a public defender who's not as engaged as you might hope, now I can lean on you and basically say, you can either plead out to this 2 years, this 3 years, or go to the violation and you're gonna get 5 years. So what do you want to do? And we know the non-unanimous jury was really successful in pressuring people in the idea of there's no way of beating this charge, even if I'm innocent. And so it's going to be another leverage point that can be done, because a violation only requires like a preponderance of the evidence that you probably did something wrong, and not even actually have to commit a crime, but like a criminal conviction, you still have those Fifth Amendment, Sixth Amendment rights, Fourth Amendment as well. So, okay, so then once you're sentenced, people are going to be doing 85% of their time because A, they want to get rid of parole altogether, and then B, they want to cut down the good time like significantly. So HB 10 will toss aside, the bulk of good time that currently exists for people in all these various ways. No one's going to argue that the system is like clean and manageable and understandable, but there is an incentive program for people to do better and be rewarded. And as Ronald was saying in his testimony, it's a control mechanism for the safety of prison employees. So we didn't create the good time system. We didn't create the parole incentive system, but it's people who have been in charge of the enforcement and the punishments who decided that this incentive would work. And, a century of data shows that not only does it incentivize better behavior, but it also gives them an opportunity to keep someone on a shorter leash after released and keep an eye on them, have some restrictions on them, and then maybe, ease your way in so they feel more comfortable with your reentry. They just want to get rid of all that. And as we know, if you are messing up a little bit, you can lose your good time for really petty stuff. And so if you only have like 15% of your good time to gain, you can lose 30 days here, 30 days there really quickly. And then eventually you're doing 100% of your time and you're walking out the door. And a lot of prison is also about staffing, right? We know that they're struggling to keep people. There's 200, 300% turnover in these prisons and jails, meaning they have to hire somebody 2-3 times for the same position because they're not paying them well enough. They're not giving enough benefits, but they're also not giving them enough protections in the sense of, like, if it becomes an unmanageable prison, even more people aren't going to want to work there. And so when you export jobs, when you automate jobs, and when you incentivize less labor, you're pretty much making it so the prison system is going to be your repository for excess labor. You're either going to be an inmate or a guard. And for them to try to manage that issue because they want to subsidize people who build out their companies with automation, which the governor just got rid of this job requirement for this tax credit. So now you can spend money on machines that put people out of work and still get this tax credit. So that was something that just happened this week as well. And then moving back to, HB 10 is the dangerous offender bill. Considering HB 14 is a dangerous offender, it's very similar to HB 10 in the sense that it's an 85% bill. The thing that makes it interesting or important is it sets a standard for like a 2-strike policy. And so basically, if you have a previous conviction of either violence or a sex offense or a drug distribution offense, then you're eligible for this like 2 strikes, you're out kind of process. So if we're going to move from 3 strikes concepts to 2 strikes concepts, we're actually just making our way towards 1 strike concepts. And it's clear that the tenor of this prime session is that we don't care about rehabilitation, whether it works or not. We just don't care. So this country has been there before. We thought we had turned a corner in the past decade, but clearly we're back to a previous spot. So, okay, so you're doing all this time and you got to go to post-conviction. Because on your direct appeal, you're not gonna be able to complain about evidence being suppressed. You're not gonna be able to complain about your lawyer, maybe not doing an investigation or putting up a bad fight. So you gotta go to post-conviction. And the people who have gotten relief never get it the first time. As a jailhouse lawyer, it's like petition after petition trying to like, can you look at the evidence? I'm sitting on this DNA, or I'm sitting on this statement, or this eyewitness testimony this lineup was like so sketch the way you did it. And you're trying to get a judge to see it, but they're finding all these ways not to hear it. And then they start saying like, oh, you already came into court. This is a successive petition. This is a repetitive petition. You're like, yeah, because you never want to hear it. And so then they start kicking you out for being repetitive, even though you weren't heard. And so HB4 is a bill that prevents judges and DAs from being like, I don't care about the procedural bars, we're just going to hear it. Like, this is interest of justice, miscarriage of justice, or you look innocent based on what I'm seeing here. Like, we're going to hear this evidence. And currently they can do that. This is clearly a swipe at people who, following the reversal of the non-unanimous jury issue, moving forward, there were a lot of people who had some clear cases of like, look, I wasn't the guy, I wasn't the lady. And so in some circumstances, judges and DAs were like, I'm going to hear it. But now you're going to have to say, nope, you've already been to court. And so that is clearly an idea of, the only thing it's going to impact is more innocent people staying in prison. Because if you were guilty, and or like dead to rights in some way, going back to court was not going to change anything. The only thing that's going to change is innocent people not getting a fair shot in court, which would include, people dealing with death sentences. And so we all know people who've been on death row that were exonerated, and now they want to add nitrogen gas in the electric chair to
What am I
two
doing?
things that would be really dysfunctional and barbaric. And now they also want to like loop it into all this secrecy. And who knows whether it's being made in some guy's like trailer in a meth lab and saying like, look, here's the nitrogen gas, and it's not even going to work halfway, or whether it's made by some manufacturer. But also, like, we as a state deserve to A, be proud of the things we do, but B, be fully aware of the things that we do. So if they're going to be killing people like in our name, this should be all above board, and we should be able to review this process and procedures. So that is a very long-winded, but I wanted to tie these things together for you, preamble, and I apologize for saying all that. But now I want to hear from y'all. And I've got some people I know that are interested in jumping in, and some people from Baton Rouge, from Lafayette, from New Orleans. But first I need to start with my man Ronald over here and ask him, what do you think is the purpose of what we're doing at the State House?
What you mean the purpose?
Like us going up there and us testifying and us, considering what we know about the determination of these legislators, this majority of these legislators and this governor, to literally pass this package. What is our purpose of going up there?
So how y'all doing? My name is Ronald Marshall. The purpose of us going to the Capitol as often as we do, as diligent as we do, is to kind of like push back. If we don't go to the Capitol, we don't create no controversy, there's no media coverage, and they just do what they want to do. But our reason for going to the Capitol as often as we do, it's not really to speak to those legislators, it's to speak to our community. It's to speak to the points of the issue that impact us. We're educating our base, we're educating the community, and we're using the media to do it. We're pushing back. That's why we have so much media coverage happening right now, because we are pushing back against this tsunami of bad legislation that's happening on Capitol Hill. And that's one of the reasons why we go to the legislature. We go to win, but a second win is to start a huge conversation, to start a huge fuss. And as long as we have that conversation going all across the country, I believe, in my opinion, we are winning. And that's the reason why we go, to make sure that everybody in the country knows that we're pushing back, we're fighting, despite what they're doing, we're still here every single day, and we're gonna be here every single day until it's all over.
Yeah, thanks for that, Ronald. And you know, just for everyone to keep in mind too, so that we're recording this episode and we're gonna be posting it for our, you know, for our people to see. And you know, some people that might see it too are people that disagree with us. So I just wanna, you know, as I get people engaged, you know, be mindful of kind of the public nature. I know a lot of times we have, you know, some kind of closed door meetings and we talk strategically amongst ourselves. This one is a little bit more open door, so just keep that in mind, even though it's your, you know, your local neighborhood Batman and Robin and whatever. But yeah, so you know, I wanted to bring in Talita. Talita, you were up there. I know we spoke a bit and we heard from you in Baton Rouge a couple days ago. Toledo, why don't you, you know, share with us, you know, a couple of things that were remarkable to you, if you can jump in. I'm not quite seeing you.
Hey, Hire. Y'all can hear me?
Hey, I can. Come on up.
Hey, how y'all doing? First of all, for me, what was so remarkable to see how we all came together. Each branches came together and we unionized as family. But what's really got me was how people from other organizations blend in with us. That walked in with us, that sat down with us, that was at our table trying to learn, trying to see what we was in there for. And they didn't understand. And those who was the first time going, they was like, wow, y'all came in numbers, y'all came in packs, y'all really about y'all business. And it was a lot of people. The night before, I went to a PJI meeting, and a lot of people there didn't know about vote. Amelia and I was there, Amelia and I, Shantae and Avis. So we asked the people, you know, uh, come join. You know, they was asking them to come to the Capitol the next day, and a lot of people didn't even know the process, didn't know what to do. So I was like, you know what, you need to reach out, you need to join your local vote organization here in Baton Rouge, because most people in Baton Rouge, and they was amazed of everything that they was learning about vote. Vote did, but for Tuesday for me was how everybody, no matter who or what organization you was in, everyone was on the same way about all these bills. That man, it's not gonna help stop crime. It's gonna hurt more than it'll help anybody. But what I took away from that, what I realized that when we all stand together, no matter what organization, no matter what race, no matter what belief, when we stand together, we can make things happen. And like Ron say, to keep going and let them know this is the conversation. Y'all not gonna close the door on us. We don't want this. We don't believe in this, and this not gonna help Louisiana not one bit. So
Yeah, thank
on
you.
the
I mean,
Capitol Tuesday.
yeah, thanks, Talita. You know, and I think it's really critical for us to at times even like step back and be like, okay, let me take the other side, and not to put it as sides, right? But let me think about the perspective of the people who are championing this. Like, they say they want to stop crime. I don't disbelieve them. I want to stop crime. Everyone here wants to stop crime. You know, and I think it really just comes down to a this divergence of strategy, of what works, and it's really disappointing to see the lack of experts up there on the subject matter, and just people swinging like a blunt instrument that has been proven like not to work. Adinas, I know that you actually shared a bit. Miss Adinas shared uh, around the issue of the drug court hearing I was in, and you talked a bit about like what worked. What did you feel if you're on there? I can't I'm trying to see. You know, what did you feel? What was your impression of sharing your story? And have you I'm trying to remember if I've seen you testify before up at the legislature.
Yeah, I think that was maybe my third time spying. Again, I am all for drug court. However, I feel like if you want to fight crime, reduce crime, then you need to have the criminals at the table. Because the criminals can tell you how to prevent crime. Like, first of all, give us some resources. Give us some, especially uh, like in the school, give us some stuff like I had when we was in school. Give us a way to be able to take care of ourselves when we get out of school and without having to go to college and spend all this money. Like, give us the stuff you got in jail. Give us the welding courses. Give us the the wood shop. Give us all the stuff. Give us the courses we need to go work in the plant. So when we come out of high school, we can do something. Give us something to do in the summertime when we're out of school. Like, if you really want to reduce crime, so we could be able to eat while we're out of school, because the state of Louisiana don't want to feed us while we're out of school. They don't. So none of the solutions to reducing crime is in the bills. The only thing in the bills is incarceration. So even if, like I testified, arresting people that have like drug addict characteristics. Like, if you did a crime, if I steal something, the characteristic of a drug addict is one of the behaviors will be stealing, right? So here I am, a person in recovery, but I'm hungry tomorrow, and I go get me a honey bun and a thing of milk because I'm hungry. You gonna drug test me? That's a wasted drug kit because I don't do drugs. Then you be I don't do drugs. So how are you going to determine who's the drug addict? Why that y'all don't even know how to solve the problem? Like, about increasing
Adidas, I think you might be,
Can you hear me?
Adidas, I think you're breaking up on me a little bit. And of course, sadly, oh, hold on a second. Go to the audio. So sad, of course, I'm sadly hoping it's you and not us, because if it's us, it's like everyone. If it's you, it's not everyone. But yeah,
Can you hear me?
I see. I can hear you, yeah.
Yeah. I just don't think they know how to address the issues that they go for the bills that they bring in, and what's the motivation behind their bills besides incarceration. And why would you put somebody on probation for 8 years for a drug offense if that's the case? If I'm a meth head or a oxycontin head, 8 years of probation is going to guarantee more than likely that I fail at this probation, because you didn't say anything about continued substance abuse treatment. So if I don't know how to stop and stay stopped when you arrest me, how do you think I'm gonna stop and stay stopped? And I'm back out on the street just with probation. I don't have link the person up with another person in recovery. Like, give them a resource.
Yeah, you're totally right, Adidas. And I think that some people believe this is really just a blatant expansion of the mass incarceration industry, and there's really nothing else going on to it. It's a valid point of view, and sometimes things are just what they seem. But I'd like to turn to Miss Kim, Kim Robinson.
I want to say one more thing.
We
I
all
want to say one more thing.
Okay.
One more thing. It made me feel like maybe there's not enough people incarcerated in parish, and this is a new way of getting more people incarcerated. That was my feeling.
Yeah. Well, that's a fair feeling. Kim, I'm going to turn to you now. I see you got your hand raised. Do you want to ask a question? Do you want to share something?
Good evening, y'all. My name is Kim Robinson, a member of VOTE. I'm just piggybacking off the bill that y'all were currently talking about, the drug court. You, Bruce, Adinas, and Miss Hammond did a wonderful job explaining it to them, even though they cut you off, Bruce. like Adina said, I just thought for me, Emerson was more about all this money that she could have gotten in her drug court, and not just the core, the core of the problem. A small area, she wanted all this money for her parish, and wasn't really concerned about uh substance abuse, as a whole. People gonna take, I know if I was a drug addict, I wouldn't take the chance of doing no I would do 60 days as opposed to coming out and have marijuana or cocaine on me and be susceptible or going back to jail, for 8 years. While I turned in a green card, I hope when they hear what y'all had to say and put that in, some of the points y'all made to them. So I was glad I sat in that room to hear the to hear more about that bill. I wish I would have spoke on it. Yeah, they were really talking about more about them getting more money, because New Orleans already have a drug court that I think kind of worked, but she was just talking about how much money it was, Bruce. About
Yeah,
300 million.
well, it was. The thing is, there wasn't like a clear appropriation in that
Right.
particular bill of like how much money. It was saying like, we'll take the money from the opioid settlement. So that's, TBD, I guess, we'll spread it out. So there's a lot of questionable maths going on and purposes. But I do think it's important for us to share as much as we can the reality that we have plenty of loved ones who are trapped in addiction, and it's not just the conservative rural white person who, oh my goodness, this touches me too, and I want treatment for this person, then I want the drug dealer to be, beheaded or something, and meanwhile like their own kid might be the drug dealer as well. So, we know that it's a real messy situation. Until you take, until you take a comprehensive public health approach, we're never going to lock our way out of addiction. 40 years has proven that. Okay, so I see, raise your hands, put your questions in the chat. All of that's beautiful. We're trying to manage this thing, and I really love the participation. So forgive me ahead of time if I kind of either cut people off or move around and stuff, because I do want to get a lot of voices involved. So I want to go out to Lafayette. I know Laramie Griffin was looking to say a few things or ask some questions. Where's my people in Lafayette? I see you, Sway.
Yes,
Doing your
yes.
Sway
This
things.
is Laramie Griffin, Evolve, Louisiana, and I'm from Baton Rouge, by the way. But I do
Okay.
I do partner with you pretty often. Thank you for letting me speak today. So I spoke on SB3, the Raise the Age Act, and it's troubling to me because when you look at the bottom of the text of the proposed bill, it says age 10 years and older. So does that mean they'll be able to charge a child at 10 or 11 years old as an adult also? Because right now it's to the DA's discretion, I believe. Can you answer that question for me?
So I'm gonna, if there's someone who specifically does juvenile defense, I definitely want to give you the floor. From what I
Yeah.
understand is you're exactly right. I think it's under 14. There's this discretion of what to do with the child, but they can go very young. I want to say I was aware of a case where the child was 11 and accidentally had killed a sibling. And they wanted to charge this kid with murder over the objections of the mother. And so there's, this idea that, we're kind of back to the super predator concepts, where like young people who do wrong are just sort of like born evil. And we all know where that might go. And like basically where it is going. Great point.
Right. And the point I brought up, there's an 11-year-old girl in New Iberia currently. She's been incarcerated for 85 days. Um, uh, charged with first-degree murder of a 36-year-old man. And so I did bring that up during the testimony, and we are actually rallying for her with partnering with Vote, Flick, the Village 337, and Speaker to Inspire, and a few other organizations to rally for her for her release, because the charges do not match as far as her age, and she is maybe 90 pounds soaking wet. And so if anybody wants to join in on us with that, we're going to be there March 7th. We had 3 different actions already since January, and we're going to be there for her that day and, you know, advocate for her release. So just want to give a big shout out to Senator Regina Barrow, who gave us, me and Reverend Anderson, I believe, 5 minutes to talk. I went back and listened to mine and hers, and she gave us 5 minutes to talk. Well, we got 5 minutes to talk. They cut us off. I was just going to talk until they stopped me. But then Senator Regina Barrow came and gave us an extra 3 minutes to speak, you know, on what happened, because we actually care about the children. We see them every day. We deal with them every day. So I want to thank her for that. And I thank you guys for putting this thing together on Tuesday. It was wonderful. It was awesome. Saw many people I haven't seen in a long time. And I just love the solidarity and the unity that's going on. Thanks.
All right, Laramie, that's great. And where on March 7th? Can you give us a spot?
Iberia Parish Courthouse, 300 Iberia Street at 9 a.m. We will be sending out the email. We will be sending it to Consuelo very soon, as we just finished up a prayer rally for the 11-year-old at the Lafayette Juvenile Detention Home just a couple of weeks back. And so that's going to be the 7th and the 8th. Yes, sir.
Thank you. And people who are signed up for our newsletter, that's definitely going to be in the newsletter, plus on our social media. You know, we've got a very active Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. So, you know, check our stuff there, and you can also interact with us as well. I see, who's that? Is that Bonnie with her hand up? Hey, Bonnie, how about we go over to you? A long time ally of this work.
Okay.
What's your take?
Well, Bruce, I've been watching this and have been extremely disappointed, but super impressed with Vote and how you've organized and pulled this together and brought everybody in on Tuesday. I was concerned to see that some people who wanted to speak in opposition to bills were limited, but district attorneys, district attorney associations, and sheriffs got to speak all they wanted. So I wonder if there's any recourse to people who got cut off. That's my first question. My second question.
Okay.
Do you think there's going to be any opportunity to change any of this in the general session? Because these folks are just voting lockstep together and everything's passing.
Two great questions. The first one, and I'm hoping potentially Emily Posner Emily, are you on the call? If so, I'd love you to jump in and talk about the case that we filed about exactly what you're talking about, Bonnie, of having testimony cut off. We went to court over it.
Great.
Emily, are you in?
I'm here. Did you hear me?
All right. I can hear you.
All right, I'm heading back from Baton Rouge. We got a car full of folks. We got one of our petitioners. Erica's here. Vote member Maureen is here, and Lily the extra is driving. We did the legal research. I'm in passenger seat, just setting the scene for you all. So we had a hearing this morning, and I think overall it went very well in the sense of we were able to get witnesses testify, none of whom were actually individuals who presented affidavits. So we had people who testified on 4 different bills, all of whom had testimony cut off. So we had either affidavit or live testimony about HB4, the VCR bill, HB 6, the death penalty bill, HB 9, the parole bill, and HB 10, the good time bill, all of which for the public was cut off and not allowed to I was surprised in the sense that the judge actually heard the case, that he didn't dismiss it for any procedural jurisdiction. And he went back to chambers for a short period of time, and rule ended up coming out and denying our TRO. But the reason he denied it is really the rub, and he acknowledged it, is what is considered a public hearing. And even though the Louisiana Constitution guarantees that the public has the right to a public hearing for any bill being committee, the judge indicated that that does not mean that everyone who wants to speak is entitled to the right to speak. That's verbatim. I mean, not verbatim, but pretty close to what he said. Which is that is the legal issue at hand. It's probably what we call a case of first impression that this is an issue that's never been heard.
Emily, you're breaking up a little bit. Maybe if you shut off your video, we can get a little bit clearer.
Right?
Okay, so you were saying that he was saying that he doesn't think just because you have the right to speak, you're not everyone is not necessarily entitled to speak. And we sort of anticipated that as the legal question. Where do we go from here?
There's several options. I think, and I think the question at this point we have to wait for our lawsuit to get served. So once it is served on the defendant, we will set a hearing date for what's called the preliminary injunction, and we will actually get to have a full-blown evidentiary hearing on this matter. So from the TRO, it seems pretty clear, that no one is contesting the fact that there was a hearing that got truncated and people didn't get the right to testify. So it's going to boil down to what is considered a public hearing. And so I think we'll have an opportunity. These bills will likely all have been passed at this point, and so we will have the opportunity to really test whether or not this was done constitutionally and whether or not the Louisiana Constitution does guarantee what I would define a public hearing is that everyone is entitled to participate.
Great, thanks, Emily. And I'm just going to ask it for people to mute who are not speaking. But yeah, that was a great lead in by Emily. A lot of hard work going in from our legal team, and great solidarity work by everybody who to show like this is what's happening. And we all anticipated that there's going to be a lot of legal challenges in this administration. There's going to be a lot of constitutional questions of, can you do this?
And if I could just put out there, you're such a large group, I think it is essential for not only the litigation, but for democracy, that with these 4 bills where people were cut off from testimony get over to the Senate side, that advocates and people who care about these issues, there are enough of us to be testifying for longer than an hour, so that if we get cut off again, you can demonstrate that this hour is not a sufficient amount of time to actually hear opposition. And it's really a nonpartisan issue. So I understand that it's a very short turnaround, that, advocates and everyone on the call, that we may not know when the hearing is going to be in the Senate until the day before, maybe the morning of. But please do try to come if you can. And not just check a red card that you oppose it, but check a red card that you would like to speak, even if you don't take your full 3 minutes. I think it's going to be very important. That's all I have.
Thanks, Emily. That's great. And just kind of going back to Bonnie's questions, about the next session, or even, kind of bridging with what's now, like more than likely, and I haven't checked the schedules and stuff in a whole hour, but more than likely the bills that were heard in the House committees this past week will be heard in the Senate committees, maybe Monday, Tuesday, maybe just Monday. And then similar to the bills that were heard in the Senate committees will be heard in those House committees again, including the ACJ, Criminal Justice Committee, where we were cut off repeatedly. And so there's going to be either another what we consider a violation or another what they consider to be reasonable. But it's going to, I'm sure, happen some more. And just as a reminder to people, years after the prohibition, the constitutional prohibition, that someone would have to wait 15 years after a sentence is complete to run for office, Derek Shepard filed a case saying you didn't pass it properly. And he was correct. And it turns out that the way that they did the procedure was not quite the way it's supposed to go down. The bills that were passed in the House and the Senate were slightly different, and you can't do that to do a constitutional amendment. And that got struck down years after already being in place. So like, we don't quit. There's many fronts to be fighting on and issues to be lifting up. And Ms. Bonnie, I do think that next session, the regular session that's happening in about a month, is going to be more of the same. Same cast of characters. It's the same supporters and oppositions. So we'll just see if for some people they've laid down their hand on criminal justice and they're moving on to these other important issues that we face in the state, or whether there's going to be 50 more criminal justice bills, which is quite likely. The Criminal Justice Committee is repeatedly the most busy committee in our state, which I think in some ways tells you everything you need to know. It's not education. It's not health and welfare. It's not appropriations. It's not insurance. It is criminal justice. And it just summarizes everything. All right, so I want to get to some more people here. We've got Devin Norman is in the chat. Devin, how about you jump in and share some things or ask a question? And we can always come back to Devin if there's some tech stuff.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm here.
Hey, how's it going? All right.
All right. We appreciate the opportunity. I'm here with Dr. Chris Williams with the Village 337. We want to, of course, say we went and advocated on the 20th, and it was an awesome experience. And we certainly are appreciative of that opportunity and all of the opportunities that we have to partner in Southwest Louisiana. Our partners in Southwest Louisiana will also be at the Capitol on the 26th, which is Monday. And that's going to be with Black Voters Matter, Power Coalition, the Village 337, a new chapter, the NAACP, Lead Louisiana, United Ballot, and a few other partners. And the overarching goal of that day is to go there to bring people. We're going to bring a bus of people from Southwest Louisiana, most of them who have never been to the Capitol. The trajectory is to try to get people 35 and under there to show them around the Capitol. It's not really going to be a day where we're going to specifically have people specify what items they want to speak on or anything like that, but we just want to get them acclimated to the Capitol. And then at about 12 o'clock, we're going to have a press conference. And then, of course, we want to give at the steps of the Capitol and give an opportunity to all the partners to speak their piece on the issue. Hopefully, we'll have some national media partners out there as well as local. So we just wanted to lift that up, and hopefully we can see you guys out there. And I know everybody's pretty busy, but we just appreciate the opportunity to connect. And then also, yes, as Laramie mentioned earlier, we are advocating for the 11-year-old who's currently incarcerated. As you know, her mother and brother as well has been incarcerated, and we want to make sure that we lift up her situation as well as that.
That's what's up, Devin. You're definitely going to see a lot of us back up there on Monday the 26th, and just so folks know that are newer to the Capitol, we oftentimes kind of gather up in what we call Chico's Cafe. Shout out to Chico Yancey, one of the book's co-founders, and we often have what we consider like our cheat sheets and we'll give like a little bit of a red card, green card approach to different bills, sort of like what they do. And so we'll have extra copies of those for folks that are interested, you know, kind of have in their hand as they're going sometimes to different committees. But speaking of first times at the Capitol, Wayne, I know Wayne Chester, that was this, I believe this was your first time going up. I know you recently voted.
Yes,
What was your
yeah.
take? What did you touch there? What's up,
Last
Wayne?
time I was on those grounds. Hi, wait, hello. Hi, everyone. I'm Wayne Chester. I'm a vote member. Last time I was on those grounds, I was a trustee. I was able to work those buildings. So first of all, that was a great feeling being back on those grounds to be able to oppose, contest, or just give my thoughts, right? Be heard. How you ain't got to go to jail to learn anything. Thanks to vote, I was able to vote the very first time ever in my life. And that was a great feeling because 4 out of the 3 I picked, I voted for the in office. So I know it can work if everyone is on board. Like I love to say, thank vote for allowing me to be a member, but count me in, all y'all. Everyone on, count me in. What's the next step? You know, I love to target the youth because right now they pick me up. Lo, what we got to do? Thank you.
All right, well, I'm going to throw it out there right now for you and for everybody else. You know, Monday morning, you know, kind of we'll schedule, you know, TBD, but most likely they'll be starting at 9 a.m. And most likely we'll be meeting here at the vote office, 4930 Washington, at 7:30 a.m. to carpool up there. So people who want to get in touch, feel free to jump in. I know that a lot of us are willing to use our cars. It's just a matter of like, how many do we really need? So 7:30 is a good meetup. Baton Rouge, I know y'all have a whole different, you know, stay in your pajamas for a long time and maybe have a cigarette in the courtyard, whatever it is that you do. But you're waking up a little bit after us. In Lafayette, I know that you guys usually leave maybe about an hour before, maybe about 8 versus 7:30. But to that question, I'll actually just kick it over to Matthew in Lafayette, and you can answer that, but also share some of your experience.
Thank you, and hello to everybody. I saw in the chat some people were asking about what to do next, and I wanted to share an observation I made during my time at the Capitol. I get money on Senate Bill 3, which was the lower the age bill. And the Senator Heather Cloud, who was sponsoring the bill, mentioned that it was never part of her agenda. It was not part of her intention. And so we see a lot of folks who are carrying bills and participating in things that were not part of their original agenda. We also saw yesterday afternoon, Rep. Mark Wright state pretty plainly at the close of the session, right? Like, look at the scoreboard, right? Like, these bills are going through no matter what. And so it got me thinking, right? To do next. There are a lot of newly elected and first-time elected representatives and senators that are getting caught up in everything that's happening, whether it was part of their agenda, whether they believe in it, whether they want to support it or not. There are a lot of those folks who are in the legislature for the very first time who are getting caught up in votes and bills. And I think that's a really important place for us to advocate and focus, because these sometimes aren't people who go in with wanting to have a tough on crime agenda, who want to support bills right off the bat. But there are a lot of first-time legislators that don't have their minds made up, aren't informed about what's happening, and they are just being sort of pushed and pressured to vote ways. And it's a talk to them, but then develop those relationships, because they're going to be in those seats for at least 3 more years, including this general session. So I just wanted to share that as far as an observation that I made about sort of people who are coming to the legislature for the first time, and a way that we can actually take tangible steps to build those relationships with people who are going to be there for years to come.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. And, for folks that, want to get involved and, speak and that such, which is really critical. We have another, training that we're doing on this Wednesday. Correct me if I'm wrong, somebody, at 6 PM. We're doing it, on Zoom. Anisha, I think maybe someone can put it in the chat that I'm correct on all that. And we're going to share that out, in our various forms of newsletters and stuff. And, we'll be looking at, things that go well or don't go well, in public testimonies. I know that I personally testified in, I want to say, two different committees in the Senate, two different committees in the House, and probably on about like 8 bills or something. I was running around, and some of the testimonies, I think, obviously the votes went the way they went, but some were more illuminating than others. Some might have impacted more people than others, but as Matt says, a lot of them are new folks, that are sometimes just starting their careers. And if and when we get the other side of this bump in the road, it's going to be based on a lot of them, having their own kind of come to Jesus moment and realizing they want to be on the side of solving problems, not just making them worse. So we thought we had made a lot of progress with previous legislators, and one who actually came to bat as a witness, Representative Joe Marino from Gretna, former Representative Joe Marino, former chair of the Criminal Justice Committee, and he dropped the knowledge about Justice Reinvestment Initiative, gave the data, gave how things were working, gave the bumps in the road of like what wasn't funded, COVID impacts. And he realized it was on deaf ears, but in a way, like, we're laying down the record. We're telling people like what's really happening, and eventually people are going to be, the majority is going to be saying like, look, let's go this other direction. And that's what happened previously, and it's what's going to happen again. So yeah, I want to go back to, I believe we're going back to BR with Shantae. Shantae, are you on? I know you wanted to engage with us here on From Change to Change. Where are you at?
Am currently and hopefully
Shantae, I kind of lost you.
She's at
So
work,
apparently
Bruce, so she can't comment right now. So she said she'll participate in the next one. She's just not able to answer your question because she's at work.
All right, thanks, Alona. How about we move to Josie Alexander? What you got? And I realize too, we're getting a little later into our lunch break idea. So I know some folks maybe who are on jumped off, and so I want to be respectful of people's time. How about Fisher? I know, did I see Fisher on here? Fisher Shaper?
Fisher was here.
He was here.
Okay. We got also Jackie Germany. Miss Betty. Okay, we're losing folks or whatnot. Okay, so yeah, so I know a lot of people had to get off, and that's pretty awesome. So I would say, yeah, Matt's hand. Matt, do you want to jump back in, or it's still up?
Yeah, I was gonna mention something that wasn't part of what I said earlier. And since you mentioned the training coming up, one thing that I wanted to say to folks was definitely check out the trainings that Vote is offering. They're a huge help. One thing that I also noticed, not about sort of like contacting your rep, was pretty much anybody who is up there, who's on committees, loves to reframe whatever you're talking about if you're giving testimony. They're very good at it, right? Because they have their talking points and they want to reframe everything through their talking points. And that was something I experienced in my testimony. Was the person who was sponsoring the bill sort of took what I said and then wanted to tell me exactly what was right and wrong, and reframe everything I said. Say that again, Bruce.
Did you get mansplained?
I might have. But I think these trainings are a really good opportunity to think about how you, if you're giving testimony or writing emails or calling your representatives or even talking to friends and family member, how we frame what we're doing, and we don't allow the argument to be reframed against our movement and what we're trying to accomplish, because the people at the Capitol are really, really good at reframing it in a way where it sounds like there can be no opposition to this. This is the only solution to the problem. And so I just want to give a shout out to the trainings Vote's offering up in the coming weeks.
Bruce Fisher is on. He just didn't hear you. If you want to shout out to him again, he's ready.
Yeah, come on, Fisher, come on in.
Sorry about that. I hit the wrong button. Yeah. Well, thanks for organizing the legislative day on such short notice, and also really appreciated and agreed with the injunction suit, even if it doesn't turn out in our favor in the end. Maybe we'll get lucky. And then also I wanted to shout out Alonzo Knox for he kind of held the room a little bit that day, it seemed like to me. And although a lot of those things didn't turn out in our favor, he kind of spoke up and was kind of giving us little nuggets that I'm going to try to follow through on, which is see who's voting on what. And I also appreciate the comments made just a minute ago about these are new folks and they might be getting pushed around a little bit because they don't really know what's going on. And so maybe they just, need a little guidance or maybe another perspective from our end. So I'm looking forward to helping out with that. Thanks everyone who came and spoke and supported.
Thanks, Fisher. Yeah, so I want to, ask Nziki to kind of share with everybody, particularly one thing that I want you to touch on is getting ourselves registered to vote, making sure we are, and then tell us about changing your registration and the elections coming up.
Well, of course, we need all our folks to have our feet on the ground. So in order to do that, you need to make sure that your registration is in order. I don't care if it's changing your address, whatever you need to be updated. If you need any assistance, you could call Vote, reach out to Charles, myself, any of the organizers. Want to make sure you're on board with that. The paper registration, that deadline has passed, but you still can make sure you get registered and get all your stuff in order online. So that's at the Go Vote. Go on Go Vote website. Have all of what you need. So when we go out, go out to the polls, we need to have everything in order. And you need to be encouraging everyone, of course, all your neighbors and those youngsters, your nephews, those uncles, because we are most affected by this. So it's no time to ignore this. I mean, we done with it. We done. And of course, because of all the strategies they've been working on, everybody have to have their feet on the ground. And of course, voter registration is part of that process. We would like to see those youngsters. So even Taylor commenting, I know we had some Xavier folks on yesterday. We want to share with just our neighbors right there about voting in the parish where they at now. They're affected by what's going on in Louisiana. So we want to make sure that we get our young folks out, get those college students to connect with us here at Vote. Make sure you come to the monthly meetings and make sure that you are on our socials so you can stay up, so you can stay in the loop. If you have any voter registration needs, again, I can't express this enough, reach out to us. We're ready, we're here, and everybody here at Vote is just on the ground. I don't know. I want to just close with I'm really thankful. Of course, I'm an employee at Vote, but a member to educate, to have us staying in the loop, to host this session right here is just really helpful. I know I've been talking to incarcerated folks a lot, even on last night, a lot. And those that's inside, I'll say police, the guards and all those that have their hand in our folks on their neck, I'll say on the inside. They're already like changing the game. On Monday, I was told that they started doing a lot of after the session was over. You know, they really feeling like they got Landry on their side. So a lot of strip searching was going on. Folks was going to the dungeon more than ever. I was told a whole tier went to the dungeon almost. So, you know, we gotta support those on the inside too, but more than anything, we gotta make sure all our loved ones and our family getting out the vote. We gotta get out the vote.
All right, thanks, Nziki. Ilona, I think that you mentioned there might be some questions in the chat that we might have missed. What do we got in there?
Sorry, hang on one second. I'm trying to keep
Yeah,
people muted.
that's all right. And you know,
I think we had
some.
we had some questions. Yeah, you covered some of the stuff. There were questions about like how do we get engaged? There were, give me a second. There was a question about the folks who I guess must have been in the juvenile room in Judiciary C, whether or not were there young people who actually gave some testimony and just kind of encouragement of how can we get young people to actually engage to register. So I know Moon and a bunch of our folks from Lafayette and the Evolve folks were in there. So I don't know if you can answer that question, whether or not we had any kind of young people speak on the either the lower the age or the kind of changes once you get adjudicated.
I'm not sure about that. I was the first person to testify and I had to leave because I had to be back in Lafayette in the afternoon. So I'm not sure the rest of the folks who followed.
Okay. There is a question about
I was in there a bit.
Yep.
I was just gonna say, I testified also in the juvenile bills and, you know, it's a great point to be made in the form of a question, which is, you know, here's these things that are gonna be impacting, you know, at least in terms of the living, you know, kids who are 7, 8, 9, 11, 13, because, you know, they're gonna be turning that age. And, you know, they're doing this stuff during the school day and they're limiting public testimony. And then they want to basically say, like, you should know the laws before you know, as a teenager, kind of get into a situation and do something irresponsible. So, you know, it is what it is. We all know what it is. Sorry, there was another one you were going to mention?
Yep, there was a question in the chat about if we are going to the Capitol next week, what is the best way to split our time between the House and the Senate, and just how kind of we saw that we had so many hearings going on at the same time. It seems purposely designed to make it hard for us to speak against each bill when they're being heard simultaneous. So any kind of feedback for folks who will be going up to the Capitol next week about how best to use their time.
So that's a great question, Ilona. We'll know, you know, probably by the end of today. And for those that, you know, that need to know, we're definitely going to be sharing out, you know, some more strategic approaches Monday and Tuesday and such. So I'll just leave it at that. But just generally speaking, you know, one of the things that I did that I found helpful that I encourage everyone to do as well is if you have AirPods, for instance, or headphones or something, and you're sitting in one committee, on your phone, on the legislative app, you can watch video of another committee. And or on your computer, you can, let's say you're not listening, but you're able to see like what's next on an agenda kind of thing, and or pull up the video and leave the audio off. You can kind of see maybe who's testifying. So it's one way of kind of being in two rooms at once, then also being in touch with each other and being coordinated. We can be in, you know, what is likely to be, let's say, about 4 rooms on Monday and 4 rooms, maybe 5 rooms on Tuesday. But all that is kind of the work of the rest of the day and the weekend.
I have another question. Now that a lot of these bills have been passing out of committee from like the House to the House floor and going back to the Senate, the question was, what's the timeline on them getting like passed or not passed? And what is the public's role in affecting those decisions? So we did talk a little bit about emailing legislators, calling legislators, going to the Capitol. Is there anything else, given the fast pace that we have going on, that you might want to share with folks?
Yeah, I mean, the reality is the pace that they're on is not actually super fast, except that they're skipping steps, right? So as you can see, like, I mean, the Senate stopped yesterday and we're like, yeah, we'll reconvene on Sunday at 5 p.m. Like, they're not working overtime to get this stuff done. It is a relatively small amount of bills, like 24 bill, a couple other ones with like some appropriations that are spread out amongst these committees. So each committee is hearing, you know, somewhere between 1 and 7, maybe 8 bills. And so they're able to get through these, especially if they're cutting off testimony. But the way it looks like is they'll get everything through these floors by the week. They'll go back to the opposite committees. And then by the end of next week, they might be in the same space they're in now, but they'll be passing it on the other chamber side. So then those bills, if they changed any, they gotta have to go to like a conference committee to get the bills exactly right and maybe send it back over to the floor. But again, all that stuff can be done in almost like a last minute approach, which usually is how it goes in a legislative session. But in this case, they have so many days to do it. They could be sending bills to the governor's desk like next Friday. And then, as we all know, it seems like he drafted the bills, or his team did. And so of course he's gonna sign them. So that, you know, they could be having bill signing ceremonies. Who knows, not next week, but you know, the sort of Tuesday or Wednesday after that. I'm not staring at a calendar, but obviously that's pretty close. And we're, you know, a week from today is still not even March. It's email. Yeah, so email testimony, I mean, there's so many ways to approach, you know, getting involved. You know, there's email testimonies, there's action alerts. Be on the lookout from us for action alerts you can, you know, click on, and helps you out with sending it to the right people, and you know, kind of some facts, and you can add in you know, some personal insights as well. Phone calls, you know, to the number that you see on the legislator's website, their office, like peppering them with that, and just reminding them that there's not, you know, not all your constituents see it the same way that, you know, Governor Landry does. And we're everywhere, and people that see it in a different light. And remind them, we too want no crime. We just feel that you can do that by addressing poverty and education and healthcare and mental health and substance abuse. We know that people who got housing vouchers had about a 10% recidivism rate, so 90% success. People who succeeded had about a $15,000 median income. People who didn't make it had about a $3,000 or $5,000 median income. So, you know, jobs and housing are keys to success. So if you really want to stop crime, you'd be working on these things. If you just want to punish people harder, well, they're doing really well at that. Okay, so I don't want to go too much longer, so I'll just say, unless someone has like a burning question, I'm gonna move on to our.
I don't have a burning question, but I do have a burning comment.
Okay, burn away, Linda.
This is Linda Turner. I just wanted to say, after the 20th, I was just like really devastated. I had a copy of those proposed bills, and I was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. So I've spoken to several young men after I left the Capitol that day. As a matter of fact, it was late that evening, to let them know what was going on. When I said several, I mean about six people. Since then, I've probably talked to about 25. And several of those people are not registered to vote. And it is my understanding all of which are eligible, but not registered. I will be doing that Monday. That is what I will be doing. I have scheduled a day to just take that time out and just do it. Just do it. I informed them. Of course, they had no idea about the proposed bills, all people of which had, you know, a stint with the law for some reason or even jail time. And it's just amazing. Everybody, I had them so worked up. They were ready to go and vote that day. I'm going to end by saying, I don't know the outcome of what's been proposed, the legislation. I don't know how it's going to turn out. But I did tell them, let's make sure when this term is up for this person, we need to make sure he don't get another term. So that's my mission. I'm on a mission, regardless. I'm on a mission. He can serve this one, but he won't serve another one.
Thank you, Miss Linda. I don't know if I can close out this this kind of epic Chains of Chains episode that we've had here. I want to thank everybody who has gone to the Capitol, who's shared information with other people, who's educated themselves. You know, obviously we got to do this as a whole community or it's not going to happen. I want to thank my wonderful colleagues, many of whom I'm going to see all next week in Baton Rouge. You'll see Ronald and me, Solid, the Chico, but also so many more of our team is going to be all up in that building, and all of you as well. So with that, I'll say, you know, get in your final shares of call this numbers and in the chat, and yeah, sign up for our stuff. Go to both of our websites, voiceoftheexperience.org and votersorganizedtoeducate.org. We have lots of material to share, and we're always trying to build with all the people out there. All right, so I'll say peace until the next episode.
All right, everybody.
No surrender.
No retreat.
No surrender.
No retreat.
No retreat.
No retreat.